to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
You with GB News? Let's bring you the latest news headlines. And Jeremy Hunt on Budget Day has vowed to encourage millions to rejoin the workforce and boost Britain's financial growth in his first budget as Chancellor. Mr Hunt said the Office for Budget Responsibility now forecasts the UK will no longer enter a recession this year. Instead, inflation is predicted to fall from 10.7%, that's at the end of last year, to 2.9% by the end of 2023. Well, the measures in the budget include a reduction in duty paid on draft, beer and cider bought in pubs, also a further 12-month freeze on fuel duty, as well as abolishing the lifetime allowance on tax-free pension savings, which was at £1 million. And the Chancellor has also made moves to extend the current energy price guarantee for a further 3 months and bring prepayment meter charges in line with those who pay by direct debit. Jeremy Hunt also announced an increase to the defence budget worth £11 billion, that's over the next 5 years, and he freed the way for more women to return to work. Eligible households will be offered 30 hours of free childcare a week for every child over the age of 9 months.
We have never seen before such a comprehensive attempt to say that in this country, if people want to work, we should take away the barriers. And that doesn't matter if you're an older person, someone who's disabled, someone who's looking for work, a parent worried about childcare costs. The government is on your side. If you want to work, we want to help you.
However, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called the budget a sticking plaster.
His opening boast was that things aren't quite as bad now as they were in October last year after the kamikaze budget. And the more that he pretends everything is fine, the more he shows just how out of touch they are. After 13 years of his government, our economy needed major surgery. But like millions across our country, this budget leaves us stuck in the waiting room with only a sticking plaster to hand.
Sir Keir Starmer. Well, in news away from the budget and after a banking collapse in the United States, the London Stock Exchange has suffered its worst losses since the start of the COVID pandemic as fears of a global banking crisis intensify. Here in London, the FTSE 100 closed down more than 292 points as worldwide banking stocks went into free fall just days after the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank in the States. Credit Suisse was one of the big players worst affected, seeing its share price drop by a quarter to a new record low, and that coming a day after the bank had told investors it had failed to identify any risks in its own assessment of its financial health. Now, NASA has unveiled a prototype of a spacesuit set to be worn by the next generation of astronauts to walk on the moon's surface. Not the usual white, the new black spacesuit with orange markers features light bands and high-definition cameras. It also allows far greater mobility than its predecessors, and it'll be used during the Artemis mission, which is scheduled for 2025. That's all the news for now. Now, headliners.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Welcome to Headliners, and our target today is Thursday's newspapers. Joining me tonight, the geese to my maverick, top comedians, my wingmen, Lewis Schaefer and Paul Cox.
Yes.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Nice to see you again, Lewis. You're looking splendid as always.
You know what? You embarrass me with your good looks and your sartorial excellence.
Well, we've set the tone tonight, and Paul has...
I'm here as well.
Yeah.
It is about the best. But you two are
Do they not make ties in your size?
No, they don't. No, we haven't got that far yet.
Yeah,
no.
Oh, fair enough. Listen, let's have a quick look at the front pages and then we can start digging into them. The Times tomorrow will be leading with Hunt waves through biggest tax burden since the war. There he is waving. The Guardian giveaway for the 1%. That's their main takeaway from the budget. The Telegraph have Swiss bank crash stokes fear of new global crisis, and Camilla there at the races. The Sun, tanks a lot. Drivers save £100 a year average after 12p rise is axed. The Daily Express says, we'll make this work for Britain. Bit of Blitz spirit there, and Brian May once again pictured with his new gong. The Daily Star, it's a long shot. The tallest jockey in the world aiming for Cheltenham win. Those are the front pages. So let's kick things off with the big news of the day, Lewis, the budget. Let's start with the Guardian's take.
Well, they got a picture of Hunt here, and he looks like a clown. And that's the thing that I love about this country. When I first came to this country, the newspapers in America were very broad-minded. They weren't one-sided like this.
Oh, yeah, of course, absolutely. Famously, a nation knitted together.
Yeah,
very much in holding the centre.
Back in the day, we lied to ourselves. We thought the New York Times was, like, totally impartial.
And to be fair, the New York Times to this day, I don't think carries big colour photographs of politicians in order to on their front pages, do they? Is it always like covered in newsprint?
Oh, no. They've got their pictures now.
I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. So what do you think? The giveaway for the 1%, the idea is that he's introduced legislation. He's changed the rules on the maximum that you can save for your pension. The idea being to try and lure people to remain in work, even if they're enormously wealthy and can look forward to putting their feet up.
Yeah, and that's because he's trying to keep doctors at the NHS. This is basically towards doctors.
So they're calling them the 1%, but you're saying actually these are some of the most important people. Yeah,
they're not even that important. I don't think they're important.
What do you think, Paul? Do you think this is a good? I mean, it's a spin that the government.
Yeah, I mean, because this is the Guardian, it says they give way to the 1% because they're trying to focus in on the wealthy there. This is all aimed at, you know, people who would have £1 million in
who would have any sort of pension pot whatsoever.
Well, yes. I mean, but now it's tax-free up to £1 million. It does include the doctors. Yeah. You know, my own GP that I had for years stepped away because he was going to be paying a lot more tax on his pension. I don't think this will get him back.
So this is anecdotal evidence to suggest that the target was correctly identified at any rate.
I believe so, yeah.
We knew a couple who moved to New Zealand a couple of years ago. They had kids at my son's school, they're both GPs.
Yeah.
They sold their practice, they made an absolute fortune. I tell you, it was suddenly looked like it had been a good racket, but I had to think 40 years of listening to people complain about ingrowing toenails and something mysterious that they couldn't quite, identify.
Yeah, well, somebody described doctors being the largest placebo.
Well, they are. They're the modern priest, aren't they? They're the confessor. Anyway, Paul, what do you got with the Telegraph?
Well, this arguably is a bigger story for me than the budget. Yeah. Obviously, right now, at home, the budget's a big story. But Swiss bank crash stokes fears of a new global crisis. And this, essentially, for today's purposes, is around Credit Suisse, which is a Swiss bank, which share price has fallen 30% amid a sort of lack of confidence in the banking market.
I think they shouldn't have named themselves Credit Suisse. It's obviously some people have woken up to it.
You set yourself up for a fall there. But this is all as a knock-on ripple effect from your country of origin.
Knock-on or ripple? You've got to pick one.
Well, I'm going to go with knock-on because
it's a more dominant.
Ripple's too gentle.
Yeah.
But there's a real danger here, and I think this story's going to become a lot bigger.
Yeah. I don't think you can blame America for this. I think it's the COVID panic. It's what happens when you...
No, it's not COVID. This has come off the back of the Silicon Valley Bank, and the reason
which is part of the COVID panic, which is that they put out so much money in the stream, whatever.
Too much fear.
Too much money, which meant interest rates were low, which meant that the banks couldn't get enough money by loaning out the money because interest rates were so low, so that I don't know how it works, but basically...
I was wondering when you were going to go. Hang on, has anyone seen a road lately?
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. Nouriel Roubini, he's mentioned here on about paragraph 48 of the Telegraph. Nouriel Roubini, who I remember, he was nicknamed, they say, Dr. Doom for correctly predicting the 2008 financial crisis. Yeah. I don't think he may have been nicknamed that before the financial crisis because he'd been banned. I don't think that would have been a fair nickname, but he did. It was him and the Lib Dem chap, wasn't it, whose name escapes me briefly, who were the only two to identify
Vince Cable.
Vince Cable, who saw it coming. He says this is it again. This is a Lehman Brothers moment. On the other hand, of course, that might be just because he wants to be on the front pages again. Maybe. That has a funny effect on people.
It is a worry, though, isn't it? It is a worry, and it affects probably the other big story in the Telegraph, which is about sleep. A lot of people are going to be losing sleep over this. And what this is saying is that it's not so much the quantity of sleep, i.e. we always talk about 8 hours, it's about the quantity of sleep.
Quality.
The quality of sleep.
Quantity, yeah. Well, I think we've always known that, haven't we? They say if you go through 6 solid sleep cycles, which are about 90 minutes each, 4, which makes 6 hours, that's a pretty good night's sleep. But the trouble is, if you break those, then none of them are any good,
Which I did. I had sleep apnea. I was waking up every 90 minutes screaming, I want to see my kids.
But now you're a carnivore. Now you're on the lion diet. You're all right. Yeah.
Yes, that is actually true.
No, they do say it's very good for apnea, don't they?
That is true,
diet.
I stopped. I gave back to the NHS my CPAP machine.
Oh, I hate.
I had one of those machines.
Oh, wow. Some of my half brothers have them. I have also noticed it's extraordinarily unwelcome news, but the reality is alcohol disturbs sleep. I mean, I still think it's worth drinking sometimes, but when you get a bit older, it really does, because there's that moment when it departs the system and all your anxieties that have been slumbering in the alcoholic, they wake up and you dream, terrible. Isn't that so cruel?
Well, do you know what?
It is,
It's not just alcohol. Alcohol is just fermented sugar. It's any kind of sugar that can do this.
Oh, OK.
OK? So you get rid of sugar, any kind of carbohydrate.
Including fermented. Yeah.
Including fermented sugar. They make a separate category for alcohol.
Or big afternoon naps. Winston Churchill, who had a glass of champagne for breakfast and kept the glow going throughout the day on the best champagne available throughout the war, but of course had a really good long afternoon nap. and would wake up with a jolt as the champagne wore off and would start drinking again, work through to the early hours. What about the Sun's front page?
The Sun's front page is thanks a lot because basically Jeremy Hunt says we're not going to raise the tax on petrol, which was automatically meant to go up.
Yeah.
So basically, he said, we're not going to tax you.
Well, it's been a pretty rough couple of years for drivers, isn't it? Well, a couple of years, no, since Ukraine, I suppose, almost exactly 1 year. But the price of petrol went over £2, or the price of diesel went over £2 at one point. It's kind of terrifying. And so I suppose this is all relative. It's not going to come down very far.
Yeah, we're made to believe this is a good news story.
Yeah.
It's not really. It's kind of the status quo, I think. It is good that it's not going up, but it's already reached a point which would have been considered unaffordable 18 months ago.
It just goes to show how much you can actually bend and, how much you can take.
It's a bit like this. It's a bit like this childcare story, which on the face of it looks brilliant, supporting mothers essentially back into work. But I feel sort of conflicted and uncomfortable by the fact that what they're doing is forcing mothers back into work.
Well, and also, as my good friend Chris Snowden from the IEA pointed out, the childcare costs in this country are ridiculously high precisely because of endless government tinkering, which is just, the usual thing.
Yeah, good point.
The more you try and fix things, the more you make them worse. If the market was just allowed to settle, it would be fine.
But it should be high price because you should have a very good reason for destroying your children's lives.
Well, I don't know about destroying.
No, I think it is, and I've seen it. I've seen childcare, and I think it should. I don't think the government should be giving any money to childcare. I don't think that women should be working. I think they should be staying home and taking care of their children.
Directly into the camera to tell.
I will say this, just to stay on the story that we've actually got on the front pages today, because that was yesterday's news. In terms of petrol, I don't know whether this is a common thing, but I flogged a 2011 car exactly a year ago and bought a fairly new one, and the fuel economy has improved so much that it completely offset. I do think there is that to be thankful for. Cars, the economy of cars now is extraordinary. I mean, what they can run on it wasn't that long ago. A pretty ordinary car would do about 30 to the gallon.
Yeah, and you'd accept it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because it was 70 pence a gallon.
Yes, exactly. So things have a way of levelling out. Let's finish off quickly with our friends at the Daily Star, Paul.
It's a long shot. This is talking about a 6'4" jockey who will be racing tomorrow at Cheltenham. Now, that's twice the size of your average jockey, I'd imagine.
6'4".
That's what it says. He's going to be. That's what it says. 6'4". His feet are going to be touching the ground. He's going to be running like a Flintstones car. I think he's going to be cheating.
He'll have a little couple of wheels on the points of his toes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, good on him, but he can't. He's not going to win, is he?
He must be extraordinarily thin, wiry, and bony because the weight is the thing rather than the height, isn't it?
The picture shows it. Yeah, because they all weigh about 7 or 8 stone, don't they?
This is why they're essentially just. Horses are self-driving animals, aren't they? The jockey is pretty much, so the jockeyless horses often win the Grand National. I know it's a slightly different proposition than the Cheltenham Gold Cup, but...
His feet will be touching the ground, though, Simon. I fear this is some sort of cheating.
Everything you need to know about testicles on the front page of the Star, but we've run out of time, sadly. That's the front pages all blown up. Coming up after the break, we've got Treasury comedians, a story about the police, where we'll see how many puns can be made from the word framing, and sheep. That's right, a story about sheep every night. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, we have sex symbols Lewis Schaefer, drum cymbal Paul Cox. So, Paul, used to be Paul, Lewis was the target of my snippery and
promoted. I've turned so good looking. Look at how great I look. Look at the nice tie.
Lewis, more BBC brouhaha now as WhatsApp messages are being used to sort of present government meddling as if it's some sort of, I don't know, what exactly is the story? It's quite hard to tease it out.
Exactly, I'm glad you said that. And I'm going to say what this is. I'm not criticizing the people who put these stories up to us.
No.
What I'm criticizing is that this is a non-story, is that it says that there are troubling messages showing number 10, pressure on BBC need investigating.
Yeah.
And this guy, Rob Burley, he was the editor in charge of political programs at the BBC, said that there was pressure from Downing Street not to use the word lockdown.
Not to use the word lockdown, which is nothing, is it?
Which is nothing. And the fact is, let's say the BBC was a private news organization.
Yeah.
The government could call them up and say, hey, can you not use that thing? That'd be perfectly
we all
okay.
know. I mean, this pretense...
Can you stop interrupting me?
But seriously, the pretense that the government, the present government, have invented this kind of... Alistair Campbell, maybe before you arrived in this country, Alistair Campbell, the idea that he would even, stop at that, you know...
Yeah. Do you think that Winston Churchill didn't call up the Daily Mirror at the time, or Lord Rothermere, whoever these people are, and say, hey, listen, can you not mention this? Can you not mention this? Of course it was done. This is how the news is. It goes both ways. The problem with the BBC is that there is a BBC. I'm not even from this country, but you shouldn't have. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Do you know John Sopel?
Well, not personally, but I do know who you're referring to, yes.
He and Emily Maitlis recently left the BBC
I've seen
Newsnight along with an editor, and they do this thing called The News Agents, which I think is funded by LBC, but I might be wrong, but I think they're attached to it or something. And he has described this as not a good look, which I just think is the lamest criticism you can make of anything, isn't it?
He's a bit disingenuous.
If something that annoys you, but there's nothing wrong with it, it's not a good look.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Not a good look, John Sopel. Not a good look. Paul, we stay with WhatsApp messages now. They're trying to use them as a means of releasing budget news to make it look as if it's a leak.
Well, yes, exactly. I think it says that even the Treasury is now razzing Matt. So what they're referring to is less than 2 hours after Mr Hunt stood up in the House of Commons and delivered his budget, the Treasury's official Twitter account started sending out tweets, publishing sort of tongue-in-cheek video that made it look as if they too were leaking WhatsApp messages like Matt Hancock's
contrived messages. Here it is, it's up on the screen.
Yeah, so they were Matt Hancock's now become the whipping boy, isn't he? You know, if Jeremy Hunt is taking the mickey out of you, you are at the bottom end of the order now.
Boy, you are a beater.
Yes, you absolutely are a beater, if you're lucky.
Soy boy Hancock. I find it quite cringe when governments, anyone tries to use something like that and make it look as if a genuine meeting, a brainstorm was going on without having the sense of humour. If you got The Onion or someone to write that, or Private Eye, it could have been quite funny. You'd have 3 actual sort of suggestions that were being thrown around within the budget meeting, and somebody would be going, how about we tax goats or something? Do you know what I mean? And it would
That's
be
where the funny comes from, Simon, is it? There isn't any funny in this.
There's no funny in it at all,
exactly.
is there? They've used it as a way of attacking Hancock, but they've completely missed the opportunity to make it feel like a funny meeting, you know.
But why would they attack Matt Hancock? He's so down, and he basically is one of them, Matt Hancock.
Oh, well, he's not. They want to distance themselves from him because he's allowed himself to become this.
But of course, he's a scapegoat now, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, he was in the tent, now he's out the tent, and it's perfect opportunity. I mean, he was remiss, wasn't he? Absolutely remiss to allow these messages to get out. I know it was under an NDA, but we've done
you
it.
should never give Isabel Oakeshott a sniff of red
Oh,
meat.
no.
Absolutely not. But on the other hand, he shouldn't have gone on I'm a Celebrity either.
No.
He's basically he's inflicted on himself what Jeremy Clarkson wanted to inflict on Meghan Markle. He is now walking naked through the streets of London.
Well, he shouldn't inflict it on the British people, the COVID pandemic.
Lewis now, Times newspaper, according to LinkedIn, 1/3 of office workers would actually quit if they had to go to the office and do some work.
Well, that's what they say. And it is printed, and it is research done by LinkedIn, which is a job change website, asking people if they've considered a job change. They're on the website. Of course, they're considering a job change.
This is true. Nevertheless, it does seem that people are increasingly inclined to stay at home and work.
You know what? Everybody's increasingly inclined to stay at home. But are they going to quit their jobs during possibly a recession or at least some huge inflationary period?
Funny enough, I remember we've talked about GPs and their nice little packages earlier, but I remember The Guardian had a front page a few years ago that said something like, 1/3 of GPs are considering their future, and I was, of course they'll say that, because, well, I might resign, I might block it,
I'm considering my future here on this channel. You're considering your future, whether you're going to continue to watch
We're
this.
both just grimly holding out for retirement at this point, Lewis, but Paul has a future.
Well, I've got a couple of years left, I hope. I mean, the story here is that the horse is bolted.
Yeah.
The culture's changed.
Yeah.
The pandemic led us to this point. There was 3 years where... And let's not forget that it's only a certain section of the working force that's able to do this.
Yes.
But that horse is well gone, and we proved the principle over 3 years that it works.
I like the idea that you're using an equine metaphor on Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Yes.
No, but you know something? You're wrong, Paul. It hasn't bolted. And in the article, it even says, it even quotes the guy, the richest guy in the richest place in the big business and whatever. Dyson. Larry Fink. These are rich guys. They're saying it doesn't work.
Dyson saying people are staying at home because they're in love with their vacuum cleaner.
I'd like just to challenge that slightly. The employers want this as well. They're selling off their real estate, Lewis. They want rid. You know, they've got £1 million rents a month in central London they no longer need.
Also shops. High streets.
It has impacted those. I mean, sandwich shops that were around the offices in London are now no longer there.
Yeah.
You'll often... You know, I was only in London recently looking for my favourite sandwich shop, shawarma shop, and it's no longer there because of...
On the other hand, I live in Hove, and I have noticed there's a bit of an uptick in some quite nice sort of internet cafe-type culture and that kind of thing. So people are not working from home, they're working from within 100 metres of their home, but they're going to the local cafe. This is all quite healthy.
Big businesses need employees to keep an eye on them because people don't want to work.
Because people are lazy.
They're lazy.
Thursday's mail again, Paul. We've seen Employee of the Month. We've seen Sandwich of the Month. Time for Rosa.
Well, here we go. Fury has met police plans to spend £440,000 on framing certificates to recognise and reward officers in a bid to boost morale. Now, this isn't new. I don't know how aware you guys of this, but across all industries, this has been going on now for about 10 years, it feels like, where you are rewarding... You're saying to people, it's a pat on the back.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper than increasing their salaries.
I wouldn't mind that if somebody put up Host of the Month on the wall behind us.
Why not?
You know,
but what you get in return is a £30 voucher for Argos, a certificate that says, "Isn't Simon brilliant?" So all your colleagues can see. But after about 3 years of this, everyone's got a certificate on the wall, and it doesn't make any difference anymore.
You've got to move on.
But how much? The question is, how much is it costing? It's costing a fortune, which is 440.
No. Wait. Go on. Go on.
Come on, sir.
It's costing £440,000 for 44,000 officers, and I did the math because I'm a Jew. It's only 10 pounds, and you, as you are,
Yeah.
10 pounds.
Well, I'm half a Jew, but I can cope with like orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
44.
£10.
Exactly, it's nothing.
It's
you don't mean it's a
nothing.
fortune. It's dribbling.
nothing.
It's pathetic.
How
It's
could you
insulting.
If I gave them all £2,000 a year each in their salary, it'd be a lot more.
Making a what?
You're not really rewarding people with this stuff, are you?
Yes, you are. People want a little plaque. I want a
Well, it's
plaque.
nice, but I'd much rather...
Do you know what? I think people like a big tub of celebrations coming out on a Friday afternoon, and you get to host it because you're the big. When my kids were at school, when it was their birthday, they took in the cake. And so you get the nice... Instead, you could have done it the other way around. Shh, it's his birthday tomorrow, we're going to get him a cake.
Yeah.
No, your kid takes in the cake and distributes cake to everyone.
Right.
Becomes more popular, enjoys the gift of giving, you know?
The gift of giving diabetes.
You could take in a steak.
Of making these kids'
Freshly
lives
fried
are
offal.
miserable.
Finishing this section with The Independent, Lewis calls for campaign of genocide in the Lakes and Scottish Highlands.
Well, this is one of those stories. There's a death to animals. People, death to humans. They don't want us to eat animals. This guy, Ben Goldsmith, who's the brother of somebody, and also the...
Zach Goldsmith.
Zach Goldsmith. I think he's also the brother of the other woman. Is it the other Goldsmith?
Yeah, with the one who met Imran Khan.
It comes from a long line of money. Like super amounts of money.
Yeah.
He said that he's a DEFRA advisor, which is the Department of FRAS. I don't know what it's
Farming and Ritual Agriculture.
Ritual agriculture. He says that sheep should be banned from all farms and get rid of sheep because people aren't eating that much and it takes up a lot of space.
It's not the space, and you should do the reading. It's not the problem with sheep is that they do create a nibbled environment. You know, if you go to the Lake District, it looks gorgeous because we're used to it, but the reality is that could be covered in trees, it could be covered in sort of foliage of one kind or another.
It could be, but at the end of the day,
badgers and foxes.
We need food.
Yeah.
And the best food is lamb. Lamb is called land salmon. Land salmon because it's high in omega-3.
In your made-up language.
I know. You go look it up. Wait. I'm going to tell you something else.
Done enough. Paul.
I mean, I agree with Simon in the sense that I've done a lot of walking, and you'll see the British countryside is acres and acres of this flat green grass that was there created by sheep. I don't think sheep are the problem. I mean, at one point he says in here that sheep are not native to Britain, like they came across on rubber dinghies.
Nothing's native to Britain.
But exactly,
what
is native?
Africa. Yeah.
Well, exactly. You know, they came across before the Ice Age. I don't know. We obviously brought them across at some point. They probably came from Asia somewhere.
They seem to cope with it. I know. I understand that they look a bit sorry for themselves in the weather, but I think they cope. I'm open though to the idea that maybe we should look at some other subsidised. I personally think the future of British agriculture is tourism. I just think we would make more money if we just go all in on making the British countryside look like a Thomas Hardy. You want to be able to film any amount of Victorian, Georgian, or even like Tudor. You know.
Why don't we do that?
Can I just say something because I have a joke?
Go on.
I'm waiting now.
The future of British agriculture is tourism. What are we going to eat the foreigners?
There we go. Thank you. That's part 2 completed with aplomb. Coming up, we have a non-binary bison policing of parents. Would you like your child to start school at 5:30 a.m? We'll see you in a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, where we're still talking meat. But we have to move on. Paul, Thursday's Daily Mail now. If you're young and black in San Francisco, you might be about to be gifted.
Sure, there's a lottery, I think. San Francisco residents lined up at the city board meeting last night to share their full-throated support of a wide-eyed reparations plan. Essentially, what they're offering here, Simon, or what they're asking for, really, is $5 million per black person in San Francisco.
Per authentic descendant of slavery, right?
Yes.
ADOS, yeah.
Yes, and plus $90,000 a year and homes for $1. Now, this, you know, I appreciate, and I'll throw this context around it. I'm a white guy talking about this. This doesn't apply to me. However, it poses so many questions for me. I mean, where do we begin? Where does it end? You know, who receives it? How much do they receive?
Well,
How
they
far
did
back
have
do
in
we
the
go?
part in the article. They did have a list of criteria, but it is utterly unworkable, obviously.
Exactly,
but, yeah.
and you know, it doesn't take into account how far back you should go, because at some point they could have been slave owners themselves. You know, the slave trade didn't start and end with African black people.
I suppose, I mean, we haven't got time to do justice to the arguments for and against reparations, but what this does strike me as just an example of absurd virtue, well, not virtue signalling, actually, it's pretend politics, isn't it? Because there is a board of people in San Francisco who have the remit of listening to these kind of petitions and making some sort of decisions. There's only one African-American on that board out of 11 people. That was a detail I spotted. Rather than perhaps, you know, make absurd, encourage absurd fantasies about San Francisco bankrupting the entire country by presenting $5 million, they could just have a little bit more representation on the board itself.
Really,
you know what I mean?
I
and allow them to have some kind of impact on the city.
No. You're saying this is nothing. This is a something. This is a major deal. Maybe this won't go through, but this is actually how a tremendously large percentage of white people in America feel. They feel, and like that song, "We're Going to Give It Back," the Australian song about the, you know.
And they didn't give it back.
But they will, and eventually they will. This is very, very scary.
You think they'll give back land to the Aboriginal people in Australia?
I don't know. I think eventually they will.
The hot middle stuff, maybe.
Eventually they will, and they're gonna do this here because I'd like reparation for having my bicycle stolen when I was 12 years old.
Well, to be fair, the Jews are probably the only people who actually have achieved something approaching reparations.
No, I don't think we have.
Israel, yeah.
But no, well, you want to know something? I'm waiting to be paid for my descendants building the pyramids. I'm waiting for the Egyptians to do it.
They
Where's
don't make
my
very
money?
much money now, the pyramids, sadly, and all the gold has been taken off the top. Lewis, the Times next, and it looks like the greatest polymath genius in history was the son of a slave, and it didn't hold him back, to be fair.
You know what? I've never used the word polymath, and I'm not going to start here. But Because people don't know what it means. He's a guy who does a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci, it says research shows that his mother was a slave. And this guy, Carlo Vecchi, who's a professor at Naples University, he did a little research, and he found out that Leonardo da Vinci's mother was a slave from the Caucasus, right?
So he wasn't really fully Italian either.
No, so he wasn't Italian, and that's what the big deal is to the Italians. I guess they want to bring themselves down a little bit.
Well, his father is Italian. They have done quite a lot of research on him lately. They've managed to trace his genealogical, his DNA all the way back, but not to him, but he had, like, I think 20 or 25 half-brothers. The father was a bit of a rake. And they've managed to trace his Y chromosome all the way back, which is pretty extraordinary. I think the possibility of actually cloning Leonardo comes ever soon, a little bit closer.
Which is what this story misses slightly. I think Da Vinci himself, the genius, is the story.
Yeah.
In today's society and context, the fact that he is... born of a slave, half Italian, is a victim in some way.
Yeah.
That's big news as part of today's context.
Yeah.
But it kind of throws out the fact that, despite all of that, he was a genius.
Well, we always knew he was illegitimate, and it's long been known that his mother was a very low caste, and I think there was an attempt to kind of elevate her status. I think he freed her or something afterwards, and this is the proof they have. There was a
not sure
contract
how.
was signed or something. But, he absolutely came from the... It's very much like Shakespeare, of course, around whom there have always been conspiracy theories that he couldn't possibly have written those plays because he wasn't... It's always said he wasn't educated. The point is he wasn't of noble stock. How could he possibly have been capable of that genius when he came from such genetically... unexciting.
Well, I think that's why I don't like these stories, because it kind of just... I don't know what... It doesn't deliberately do it, but it's like it's taking a sheen off.
Yeah.
And, he's the story, he's the genius.
Well,
No,
I think it'd be great to clone him.
It says more about us today. They basically would like to find out that his mother was black. That's what they want. But he's not black, a slave. It's sort of similar.
If we don't know where the Caucasus was, but I assume it's a Caucasian. I suppose that's the Caucasus in question.
Yeah.
So he certainly is. He couldn't be less emphatically, more emphatically not black.
Right.
Paul, non-binary bison news
can we
now.
skip this?
Yeah, Netflix has quietly cancelled a woke animated show for children, and. Do you know what? I was thinking about this. I think they're making a fuss about this because it is, it's a gender story, it's a sexuality story. I was brought up on 80s TV children's shows that were kind of way out there. There was 70 Hangovers and there was the 80s stuff as well. But not once was gender or race or sexuality ever a focus of any of the stories. And the stories were all, generally, a lot of things were fantasy or about having fun.
Yeah.
And that's why things like this don't succeed. Not because it's a gender neutral bison.
Because they're trying to sell an agenda or
but because that's it.
Yeah.
If you start off with the agenda and that's what you're trying to sell to the kids, they're not interested anyway. It's us, adults, that are trying to force this on children.
Yes.
They don't care.
To be honest, they're absolutely hideous as well. Look at them. Oh my God, that is an absolute nightmare.
They would all get bullied at school.
Why does that bison live with somebody in a spaceman outfit? Doesn't make
any sense. Where are the adults?
Lewis,
why is the duck so big?
Let's go to Thursday's Mirror. It sounds like kids have it a lot harder at school now as well.
Yeah, well, a school threatens to send police round to children's home if kids miss a school day. And this doesn't even sound like news to me, because I remember when I was a kid, we had truant officers.
Right.
My own father...
G. Officer Krupke.
...was a truant officer.
Oh, really?
In the early days, yeah. Before...
Or is that just what he told you? Because he was...
Well, he did tell me that. We couldn't
he stayed at home all day, making sure you went to school.
I thought you were going to say, because he was always chasing after children.
He was out on the street all day long doing nothing.
Was he seriously, though?
Yeah, he was seriously before he became what he eventually became.
I know you could have truant officers. I suppose it's getting the police feels like a slight escalation.
But what is the police going to do? Are they going to arrest the parents?
I have a friend who lives up in the northeast. I don't think he watches this show, but if you are, hello, Carl. His job, he works for the council, and his job is to check up on people who are homeschooling their kids to make sure that they're actually homeschooling their kids and not just allowing them to play truant. I mean, and that's an official function. You know, I mean, he's not exactly the police, but he's capable of calling them in if it's necessary.
It's certainly important for children to be in school. My daughter, who's a teenager, was off school today. They're on strike. And in today's context, there is a precedent. These strikes are called at the last minute. Teachers aren't going to school. No one's chasing them up and arresting them. I know they shouldn't. That's probably a bad point.
Oh, they should. They definitely
I thought some
should.
absolute catastrophe had befallen your daughter.
Yeah.
You
Not at all.
She didn't go to school today, ends up having a toaster in the bath. I mean, unthinkable.
No.
But no, all good. Oh, finally, 3/4 of the way through the show, we have a story I do know something about. We're still on the nature of schooling and children.
Yeah, parents in Indonesia are outraged by 5 a.m. school start trial. Now, I would be outraged by this as well, to be honest. I mean, there's a pilot in Kupang, which is the capital of East Nusa in the Tenggara province of Indonesia. And it's you were laughing because I managed to get all of that out, didn't I?
Yeah,
I think I pronounced it well as well. It was quite impressive.
You're making me look bad, Paul.
I was going to go for it and I went for it and I committed. But what they're saying is, you know, that they believe it's instilling discipline in these children.
Yeah.
Now, like I just said, I've got a 13-year-old. If I woke her up at 5:30 in the morning, the only one getting disciplined is me.
It wouldn't be a discipline issue. I have 3 problems with this. One, I can barely stay up late enough to get my kids off to school at 5 a.m. But more importantly and more seriously, kids have different body clocks than us. It's just well understood. Teenagers need to get up later than us, not earlier. It's already cruel to make them go to school at 9 a.m. Well, we have to get ours into school for 8 a.m. That is really working against the brain of its anatomy at that point. They have different kind of hormonal rhythms.
They need more sleep.
Yeah.
They need 9.5 hours sleep.
Ideally, you really should be taking them into school at around mid-morning. You know, that would be fine. And I think you'd get a lot better results. And most of the school system we have is a massive overhaul. It's a hangover from the 19th century. The summer holidays, we all know, are only really there to help the kids, get the harvest in. I mean, you know, with the sheep doing all that work for us now, it's totally unnecessary. Anyway, that's it for this section. Coming up in the final freaky section, we've got ghost employees, clock illiterates, and a cocaine cat. Perfect. We'll see you in 2 minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners, kicking off Thursday's Guardian now, Lewis. Finally, the future is here. Robot delivery droids. Only 3 non-graduate level jobs remain.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is not even going to be jobs in this country.
No.
Because Co-op hires delivery droids to drop groceries in Greater Manchester. And there's a fridge-sized self-drive robots from a company called Starship Technologies will walk to customers' home at Sale, which I found that is past the Stretford end.
Sale is part of Manchester, although it is an extraordinarily appropriate place to prototype sales technology, isn't it? I wonder whether they all do that there. There they are, their picture. We can see them on the screen.
Oh, wow.
They look quite cute, don't they? They don't walk, they're on wheels, right?
I hope they're secure. Right. Because this, usually with technology, I'll say things like this can never work. And then, of course, it does work and it becomes the future. But the idea of free food going round in one of these boxes in any inner city...
Oh, is it food?
Yeah.
It's food, it's grocery delivery, you know. So basically, you see one of those and you're hungry...
Yeah.
You're just going to stop it, aren't you? I mean, you can stop that.
Well, I doubt that it's open. And the thing that has to be remembered is that every one of these things has a guy somewhere looking through.
I thought you were going to say inside it.
Yeah.
Just like... That's because we've just been talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, it is,
yeah. Well, it looks like a kind of a Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be... They say that it's not going to be this, but they're going to... But they're going to have cameras in the front and the back that someone's going to be... They're going to be like drones, like... people flying the drones. They're not doing it on their own.
I think they might have to have, like, police, you know, like private enterprise police force to basically stop people, as you say, you know, just
following it around.
Like,
well, I'm not just saying this because it's in Manchester, but there is a cost of living crisis, and essentially there's boxes of free food being driven around the town.
We're turning into that South African sci-fi film, aren't we, where there's an underclass who live on the street and they kind of, like, come down out of the hills and attack the droids that deliver the food to the wealthy people. I mean, it feels very plausibly like something out of RoboCop or whatever, doesn't it?
This is trying to get, I think, big vans off the road and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully it will encourage people to do more home cooking when they stay at home to work and their children stay at home and everyone just stays at home forever. Paul, staying with techno-dystopia in the Daily Star. It's 25 years late, but it seems that the war against the machines is finally here.
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, an AI chatbot has reportedly tricked a human into doing its work for it.
Yes.
Which we all knew. We knew this was coming, didn't we?
If you wanted to define the singularity, that would be part of the...
So OpenAI researchers ask the latest version of GPT to fill in a capture form, which is essentially they've gone, I can't do this because I'm blind. Can you do it for me? And the human has done it because we would do, because we're polite and we've got, you know, we've got a mind of our own. This is just the start, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they can trick us. Because they're just playing on our sensibilities. The sensibilities they're never going to have. They're not going to teach them to have the emotions that we've got. I'm talking about them as they're a racist.
Well, this is... a friend of mine, Tom Chivers, wrote a book, still a good book, I think, to read about AI in the future, and it said the AI is not trying to kill you. And that's the title, to reassure you, but the subtitle was, it just doesn't care either way.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, they're utterly indifferent. They're more ruthless, you know. They make Hitler look like he was, like, troubled by conscience.
Yeah, because they have no conscience, basically. Yeah. They're like women.
But obviously, I suppose the point is, do they have an objective?
That was a joke.
Yes, go on. Do they have, it's all right.
It's a joke.
Nobody laughs, Lewis. It's not that kind of show.
I know, because we're just the two other comedians. This is the worst audience I've ever had.
I didn't hear it. Sorry.
I said they have no conscience, like
women. Like women, yeah.
Like women. Anyway, Louis Schaefer on Twitter. Here's the point. Here is the point. They asked the ChatGPT. The capture says, "Are you a robot?"
Yeah.
Okay. And the ChatGPT lied and said it.
No, it was clever. It knew it couldn't lie because it's programmed not to lie by Isaac Asimov.
No, it couldn't.
What it could do is trick somebody else into doing it.
Yeah, no, because...
They said it was blind. Which effectively it is, because it hasn't got eyeballs.
It knew it was a robot. So rather than going, I
knew
can't
it couldn't
lie,
answer that
it
question.
has to ask somebody. It's been programmed by Bill Gates, so it can't lie. We know that.
Is capture just asking?
I'm not sure that's true.
Is capture just asking, I am not a robot? Is that
That's all it is.
That's all it is. It's not
Lewis,
the pictures of the
according
bus.
to The Sun, it seems a ghost worker has been busted in Brazil.
This is a tragic
The question
story.
is, how are they going to lock him up?
Well, the thing is like this guy from Brazil. He pocketed 780,000 pounds, which is probably $950,000 or something in real money, in wages, despite skipping 2 full-time jobs for 19 years. He was working for the Ministry of Health, and then he became in Rio de Janeiro. Then he became an auxiliary nurse 5 years later in San Antonio de Padua, which
At the same time.
At the same time. Would you let me finish this, Paul?
I'm sorry, Lewis. You did talk to me about this previously.
And you too.
Welcome to the Lewis Show.
Because people think that People think that I don't read these.
Lewis, you've got 2 seconds to resume the story.
So basically,
Thank you.
the guy doesn't show up for work. It's a government job. How do you know he wasn't doing a good job? By not showing up. Maybe they didn't want him to show up. If they wanted him to show up, they should have made a stink earlier, and they shouldn't demand the money now.
I think he's a genius.
Yeah.
He's not a genius. The government is bad. And if you don't check on somebody's work, then you have no right to come back later.
OK, Paul.
Am I right?
Of course, Lewis. Paul, idiot news now in the Metro. More depressing evidence that we're sliding slowly back.
Oh, man. Do you know what? I didn't believe this was true, really, but it is. I did a little bit of research of my own. 1 in 6 people living in the UK admit to struggling to tell the time unless it's a digital clock. Now, one of the lines made me laugh. A little bit further down the article, it said, people say they have to look at the big hand and the small hand to figure it out. And I thought, well...
that is how it works.
That's exactly how it works. And that's how us intelligent people do it as well.
But there is, to be fair, an analogue clock, it is a more complex thing than we've internalised it when we're young.
Yes.
And we take it for granted. But there is something quite subtle goes on.
And also, it's true to say that now there are a lot less of analogue around. Analogue of anything. Everything's digital now. Everything you're put in front of has got a digital time on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sure it's true of children. Luckily, my daughter can tell the time.
You and your daughter. You and your daughter.
How is your spatial awareness?
Well, my kids aren't as good as his kids. I don't trust them. No, this show, this basically, I was actually shocked because it said fixing a puncture on a bike. Only 32% had problem fixing a puncture on a bike.
Yeah,
that's a really low number.
Nobody fixes a puncture on a bike.
I know, but
nobody does.
Certainly, I genuinely take it to the bike shop. I mean, I can do it, but it's an hour, and I'm likely to skin my thumbnail or something. You know,
people aren't doing it, and they say ironing clothes. I don't see anybody ironing clothes anymore, and I'm very good at it, but most people can't do it. So basically, it's just the way the world is.
It is a shame, though, because I do think there's something quite fascinating about the way we manage to do things. I mean, ironing clothes, that's a manual skill. The conceptual skill where you manage to map 2 different metrics, 2 different, the hours and the minutes and the seconds on top of each other. There are 2 different speeds and understand that information in one go. It's actually quite a nice trick.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary when you look back how people used to be able to calculate prices in pounds, shillings and pence and then add them up.
Yeah.
I doubt there's one person in 100 who could do that now. We've got one last story very quickly, Lewis. A cat that has not just 9 lives, but it's living its best.
It's cocaine cat rehabbing at zoo, moves to feline ambassador program. They found a cat in a tree in a town in Ohio, and but the cat wasn't just a regular cat. It was something called a serval cat, which is an ancestor.
It's like a wild cat.
It was a wild cat.
It was wild.
In Ohio, and it had cocaine in the system. I didn't find out how they found out that there was cocaine.
I wonder whether it had cocaine in its system when it chose that coat. That's all we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have another quick look at Thursday's front pages. The Times: Hunt waves through biggest tax burden since the war. The Guardian: giveaway for the 1%. That's about pensions. The Telegraph: Swiss bank crash stokes fear of new global crisis. The Sun: tanks a lot. Drivers save £100 a year. Average after 12 pence. Rises axed. The Daily Star: it's a long shot. The tallest jockey in the world is aiming for a Cheltenham win. That's all for our show tonight. Thank you to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Paul Cox. Don't interrupt Lewis. Headliners will be back tomorrow at 11 with Andrew Doyle, Leo Kurt and Steve N. Allen. There it is, the dream team. They're back. Remember, if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for the breakfast show just after the break. Otherwise, sleep well. See you again next week. All the best. Good night.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task.